Monday for discussion. But just as a reminder where we are in the timeline, we're in our third webinar. On the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the workshop proposals for the virtual meeting, which is an opportunity for you all to submit work that you've done within your alliances. So I'll tell you a little bit about that with those deadlines falling in October. At some point in October, we likely will organize some sort of demo workshop, and we do have a couple of external folks in mind for that who we're working with. So that workshop will likely be around their schedule, and we will send you that date when we know it. And as a reminder, our virtual meeting is on Monday, November 16th and Tuesday, September 17th, both for half days in the early afternoon Eastern time at 2 p.m. Through the early evening, 6 p.m. Eastern time. And the times are the same on both days. And of course, optimistically, we are still talking about our in-person conference. We're currently looking at the commencement dates across the Boston area to try to tentatively select dates. Bearing in mind, of course, that we cannot predict the trajectory of the coronavirus and where we will be, and we will keep you posted on that. And so I will follow up by email after this webinar so that it's transparent to the community. But we wanted to do something creative and interesting for the virtual conference, and also hopefully to create and continue interactive content. And so I apologize. Hey, Finn. So we're going to carry forward your research talks as we talked about. So for those of you that submitted those abstracts, if you would like to carry those forward to this virtual meeting, you are welcome to, and we will follow up with you. But we are going to open up for submissions for 2 workshops. And the idea is that you're not reinventing your own wheel, but rather we're really interested in seeing the content that is happening across the alliances. So what do your participants see? So this is an opportunity, maybe if your alliance works with junior faculty, what might a workshop look like for those junior faculty? The idea here is that we would share the knowledge and learning, but maybe also stimulate some new light bulb moments for ourselves in terms of like, that's a really great workshop. Like, I'd love to do something like that with my participants. And we thought that there could be a sort of meta and experiential learning component. So you might explain before doing an activity why you designed it in a certain way or what you're hoping your participants get out of it. And I just want to bear in mind that, you know, some of the content that your participants may experience might be much longer than a 90-minute workshop window. And so you may not want to do a complete workshop. You might want to frame what the workshop is, do an example activity or 2, and then maybe wrap it up with some of the learning that your alliances have had. So again, the submission deadline for this is Friday, October 9th, and then we will notify folks a week later. That would give you about 1 month lead time before the conference. But again, I guess our hope is that you're bringing forward content you already have in your toolbox rather than necessarily completely creating something new for this conference. And this is also our way of just creating more presentation opportunities for the alliances. We know many of you look forward to the AGEP research meeting as an opportunity to present your work, and that was taken away in March. So we're trying to add a couple of slots back in. And if we get quite a lot of workshop submissions and more than we can accept, then we could continue the webinar series into the in-person meeting if that's something folks are interested in. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bennett, and he has a few more slides before we get into our discussion today.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So the outline of the agenda for the November conference is as you see in front of you. We'll have 2 different sub-pieces, one from 2 to 6, on each of Monday and Tuesday, November 16th and 17th. And there's symmetry between them. There'll be research talks from 2 to 2:30, a 10-minute break, followed by another set of 30-minute research talks, community dialogue, another, this time 20-minute break, and followed by a 90-minute workshop at the end of each day. Next slide, please. You should note that there's no cost associated with this virtual conference. We would love for you to advertise to your entire AGEP communities. We're exploring some virtual platforms in addition to Zoom, which might allow people to move around a little bit more freely. and we'll give you some updates on that in the coming week or two. Please register for the conference at the website meetatbu.com/AGEP 2020. Next slide. And we want to open this for your comments or questions, if you have any, that we can help answer for the November conference.
Good afternoon, Rodney Hobson.
Hello, Rodney.
University of Illinois. I had a, if I might just make sure I'm clear, all those accepted papers were forwarded and accepted for the fall for this virtual conference, or is that, did I hear that correctly?
So not all of the abstracts. So if you had a research talk at the March meeting, that will be carried forward. If you had a collaborative workshop or a lightning talk, those are part of the tools that will inform the hackathon. So at this time, we're hoping you will carry that forward, not to the virtual meeting, but to the summer meeting where we intend to continue with the hackathon work. So we will be in touch about those abstracts, but it is the research talks that we are going to carry forward into the virtual meeting. And I believe there were 6 of those that were accepted for the March meeting in 2020. So just to clarify, so if you are unsure if your proposal is one of the ones that we are carrying forward, you're welcome to follow up with us via email, and we're happy to clarify that. But we do intend to honor in one way, shape, or form, either in the virtual meeting or in the June meeting, the abstracts that were submitted the first time around. So if you had a collaborative workshop or you had a lightning talk, we're not doing that now in November, but we will honor that in the future meetings so that you don't have to resubmit and recreate your work.
That's helpful, thanks. I just can't remember, we submitted at least 4 different types of scenarios and different options, so I just can't remember which is which.
Absolutely, and we'll try to clarify that after this webinar. We can reach out to all of those folks and just make it clear via email. And yeah, as Ju mentioned in the chat, I noticed the question about participants. We do have a meeting, I think it's on my calendar for next week, with folks from the last webinar that expressed interest in brainstorming about professional development that we could offer to AGEP participants as a potential incentive to involve them in community discussions. And so we are exploring that option, but hopefully that will exist, and that will be a way for you all to motivate them and include them in our virtual meeting, in which they are most welcome. Any other final thoughts or questions about the logistics or the timeline that we went over before I turn it over to our colleagues Dana and Ju to lead today's discussion? Okay, with that, Dana and Ju, I'll let you go forward, and I'll put the link to register in the chat one last time.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, so yeah, as far as our November and upcoming summer conferences, we are seeking volunteers from our community to collaborate with us on a community-based evaluation of the AGEP 2020 conference. And so to do this, we need our community members to contribute their ideas, their expertise, and this is inclusive to all participants as well. So these are key personnel who are paid through the grants, and then individuals who are other stakeholders in your alliance and university communities. Our tasks will be to collectively analyze, report, and build on the data collected throughout these webinars, throughout our virtual November conference, and then our summer unconference. And so if you are interested, please send us an email at agepconference2020@gmail.com. All right. And so for our discussions today, we are going to lean into our pre-learning for the unconference. And as we've talked about previously, the pedagogical foundational elements that we're using in this conference is critical pedagogy. And at the start of this webinar series this summer, we asked folks to participate in a brief survey to unearth and give us some information about what we thought the values, the norms, and some actionable items that we could take on as a collective community. And we're going to continue those deep dive discussions today and continue in this effort of abiding by and leaning into critical pedagogy by bringing up the third question that we had on this survey. And Ju, if you head up to the next slide, folks can have an opportunity to read that while I'm speaking. And we will be bringing attention to the actions that we do as a national community. And so our original survey question was, as a national AGEP community, what do you think we should be taking on to address the multiple pandemics enveloping the USA, including COVID-19 and anti-Black racism? And so from here, we did an analysis of major themes from the results that folks responded to in this original survey. And Ju, if you want to head up to the next slide, I will also pass this off to you.
Thank you, Dana. Yeah. So as Dana mentioned, these responses were collected early in the summer when we set up the survey. And we kind of categorized those into three major clusters. One's related to COVID-19. Folks would like to push for greater support in terms of funding, in terms of remote working conditions for our participants. And we want to ensure equity amongst responsibilities. And the second cluster that we identified was related to anti-Black racism. The first major theme is that recognize the inequity in historical and social political context for folks who are in our community. We should all become at least becoming an ally in this effort of decolonizing graduate education. For example, in our AGEP program, or like in the hiring process for your university or institution. And then just like in general, we will also see that there's a hope and wish for national community outreach. Our community want to, express and communicate the value of science. We should support each other in ways that we can. For example, community for social justice, resources sharing. That's why we are, we're gradually doing these through our webinars and building our website as a placeholder for some of the resources. And finally, open discussion with NSF, with not only Black folks, but also all the underrepresented minorities within and beyond AGEP. So there's a lot of we can do, and you all have indicated these categories and efforts and possible actions that we can take with that. Because I know that some of you might not have participated in that survey. That's why we're having this open dialogue today to discuss this issue again with a refined and more detailed prompt. So we will be placing you all into breakout groups as we did in the previous 2 webinars. Each breakout room will have 5 or 6 people. Please identify a recorder of notes and report it to the large group for your room at the start of the discussion, so like everyone knows the responsibility. And we will bring you back after 20 minutes of discussion. Each group will have at most 1 minute for a report, because every time we discuss, we discover that you all have a lot to say, which is wonderful. But we want to make sure that all of you will have a chance to report to the larger group. And here's a link to a Google Doc where you can all take notes. We'll also post it in the chat window. So Dana will explain the discussion prompt before we put you all into breakout rooms.
Yeah, thanks, Ju. All right, y'all. So as a side note, please take an opportunity to introduce yourselves to your group members as part of your great breakout discussion as well. And so the prompt for today is, how do we reimagine the vision and mission of AGEP to include critical actions with foundations in anti-racism, supporting all members of the AGEP community, especially those most vulnerable during times of Rona or coronavirus, COVID-19. And so our hope here is that in blending these themes that have arisen in the survey, we have an opportunity to reflect on all aspects of these and their interconnection in our current landscape. So we're gonna whoosh you all to your breakout rooms. And if you have any questions, comments, or points of clarification, please let us know.
And breakout rooms are open now, so feel free to hop over.
Nice work. I think we can actually use the full 20 minutes this time, because we got them into breakouts.
We did it. We did it, team. And Ju, as a reminder, can we stop the recording so that we don't have all of
for promoting more communication among each of the AGEP alliances, similar to what we're doing now. Renee had a comment about that, right, Renee?
Yeah, I was just thinking I think there's opportunities to improve awareness amongst non-minority faculty about some of the issues that people of color, whether they're grad students or faculty, face.
Awesome. Thank you all from group 1 to share.
Could I just add something about this last point? So
yeah, of course.
I think this is something, it's fact, the reason I wanted to be here today is that, you know, we are University of Texas at Austin is part of the California Alliance, and we just got our AGEP, a new AGEP grant that will start this fall, go for 3.5 years. And one of the things we've talked about in preparing that grant is how we can better learn from each other. And so, you know, finding ways to connect, because, you know, our AGEP has a very different focus than other AGEPs do, and that's true for most of us. But I think we need to figure out a better way to communicate what we're doing and how we can learn from each other.
In fact, I have an action item, don't I, Marvin? Is to connect you with some of our other PIs at our Florida AGEP, so that we can start to recruit from each other's institutions, right?
Yeah.
All right. Sandra, you heard that live and in color. She's on the Zoom here, as well as Allison Watson.
Hi, everybody. We would welcome the opportunity to collaborate.
excellent. This is wonderful. I'm glad to hear that this is expanding opportunities for collaboration across the alliances. Wonderful. Thank you all so much for sharing. All right, how about group 2?
I can go ahead and report out for group 2.
Thank you.
So we talked a lot about allies and how the AGEP community could sort of serve as our networking, our community of support, especially for those of us who go through some challenges and challenges in academia as it relates to knowing the rules and maybe what battles to fight, what battles not to fight. So we talked about that a lot. We also talked about leading on the AGEP community to support those of us that deal with a lot of cultural taxation, burdens and challenges, and almost, I like the, that we did the meditation in the beginning. So things of that nature, we can rely on AGEP to continue to support us in those efforts. An interesting one that also came up in our conversation was using the AGEP community to increase our professional visibility so that we can improve our research profiles. So instead of, maybe navigating people to cite some of the work, some of the research work that comes out of AGEP communities. And that way you increase the research profiles of the participants and even the PIs that some are young faculty or early career faculty that will need those citations to improve their own research agendas. I think if my group, if you're out there, if I missed anything, please feel free to jump in.
Awesome, thank you. And with the interest of time, if there is something that was missed, please do add it to your group's notes so that we can be sure that it is seen at a later date and time. So yeah, how about from group 3?
Yes, happy to report out for group 3. My name is Rashida Richardson at Texas A&M University, and thank you for giving such an engaging question. How do we reimagine the vision and mission of AGEP? One of the things that we spoke about in our group, and directly to the question about vulnerable groups there, and we conclude that all are vulnerable at this time with COVID. And then we tacked on the part plus the additional layers of racism. And when we talked about racism, we acknowledged, of course, traditional groups that have experienced racism, but we also acknowledged that there will be non-traditional groups that will likely also experience racism at this time. And so it's really acknowledging, again, we're all vulnerable with COVID, we're all vulnerable with racism right now. And so part of the solution, and we spoke generally, we could speak for half a day on this matter, but in general terms, the solution is an approach of heart and structure. And so what we mean by heart, you might think about additional conversations or being sensitive to the experiences of all, and you could tease that out 100 different ways. When we spoke about structure, we were thinking about systems within the institution and things that we might do there. Again, just generally speaking right now. We also talked about the idea of connectedness, and we asked ourselves, how do we establish connectedness? With this COVID environment, how do we begin to facilitate our alliance actions appropriately in an online format? And so we shared some ideas there. One of the things that we've done at Texas A&M, and I thought it was brilliant of the conference coordinators, we normally have an in-person conference. We dine together. We, of course, engage in group work. All of these things that we would do in person, we're trying as much as possible still to maintain them online. And so one of the things for the conference that year, which it was moved online, care packets were sent out to every member, and we all opened our care packets at the same time. So it included snacks, notebooks, again, connectedness, and trying to maintain as much connectedness as possible in this new format. And to conclude, another thought we had was this idea of shifting to work more around structural oppression. And so again, we're looking at structures within institutions. What can we do to create change? And so maybe that's where we want to focus more as alliances, the institutional structure. And we thought that, of course, gaining buy-in would be one way to solve that, but then buy-in through the literature. And I hear a number of people mention that, the things that we're publishing, our research, and really sharing that with leadership. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. All right, and how about from group 4?
Is Sylvia going to jump on board too?
I'm going to support my colleague Carlos. Yes, go for it. You start.
Okay.
You lead the charge.
I will. I will be very brief because I'm getting called into another meeting. But very briefly, as pointed out in group 3, about people's experiences are very different, and we're seeing that the importance of being sensitive to all these different experiences. What a lot of the social justice questions that are being posed right now, plus the public health emergencies that we're seeing, it affects us all differently. Therefore, we're going to need to really have multifaceted perspectives and multifaceted solutions. And in particular with COVID-19, as Comas had pointed out earlier in our breakout, that the pandemic has highlighted the importance of not only having, but also supporting both diversity of the researchers that are involved in the research and diversity of the research questions themselves, right? The things that we're actually, investigating. And so I think what would be really helpful for, the NSF, and AGEP, community at large, is to empower the people who are participating in our programs to develop these, questions that are important to them and their community, and allow us to have, our researchers, supported to answer those types of questions.
Excellent, Carlos. And the only very small thing I need to add to that is that AGEP help the alliances to share that knowledge that's being obtained from all of the alliances across the United States in addressing pandemics as well as anti-racism.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you all for that. Really wonderful. All right. So yeah, we're going to have to keep moving on here. And can we hear someone from group 5?
I don't know if we officially decided who would talk. So I'll say something. We really talked about the importance of AGEP impacting institutional change, and trying to think about how to call out some of the systems that are in place that feel very white and often patriarchal, and how to make space for URMs in leadership across the organization, and just really pushing on using that critical lens to interrogate those systems and think about how the work that we're doing can bring light to them and make change.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And group 6 has typed out their response. And so you can see it listed up here on our slide. And so with the interest of time, because it is now 5 p.m., it seems like we need to add more time to these because dialogue is just a booming, and we're really generating some really fabulous actions that we can take on as communities and as a national community. And so what we will do is we will ask if you have a summary that you'd like us to put on this slide that we will then post to our website. Please do add that summary to the top of your discussion page on that Google Doc, so that way we can copy and paste it from your language and have that be available on our website. And we want to thank you all for joining us today and engaging in this conversation and these important topics that will really lend hand to how we move forward as a collective community for many years to come. So yeah, hope you all enjoy the rest of your evenings and or days wherever you are in the world right now. And we look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you all. See ya.
Bye. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. It was great to meet everyone.
Yes, lovely to meet you all.
Yeah.
Happy weekend.
Thank you.
Ming.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye. I'm gonna end meeting now.
Okay, this was
See ya.
awesome.
Thank you, Lena.
Happy weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.